So Bashor Children's Home has been something that I've been involved with in different ways through, to be honest, a lot of my ministry. When I served Calvary, United Methodist on the other side of Elkhart, one of their groups would come there for worship every Sunday. When I left Elkhart and eventually got to Fort Wayne, I found out that the church there was very connected to Bashor Home and would bring somebody from Bashor Home down to the church every year to talk about the church. And then the church would give gifts to that person to take back for the kids. And I've experienced Bashor in a lot of different ways. But one of the things I've always realized is Bashor does something that I could never do. They reach out to kids that I would never be able to connect with because I don't have that gift within me. But there are a lot of people who do have that gift, and they are connected to Bashor. And Bashor helps kids and families all throughout our area and other areas. And so when I came here, and you guys are so close to Bashor, and I asked them, well, when do you bring Bashor? Who comes from Bashor? They were like, we don't bring Bashor. I said, well, we've got to change that. So I've invited Steve Rykonen to come and share with us today about Bashor Home and the ministry that Bashor Home does. I've known Steve for a lot of years. Let me tell you from the get-go, 6'10". That's how tall he is. That'll be your number one question. How tall is that guy? 6'10". So get past that and listen to his incredible message. Welcome, Steve. We're glad you're here.
Thank you, Pastor Karen. Our scripture this morning is from Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." All right, I chose that for a specific reason because I haven't been here before. I want to take you on a little bit of a history lesson of what's happened at Bashor since I've been there the last 13, 14, 15 years. Because I truly believe that in our individual lives and in our church family, in an organization, in a business, that God truly wants to see all of us prosper. He doesn't want to have bad things happen to us. And if it does, He wants us to learn from them. And He always wants us to try to see what His vision is for us down the road and that plan to prosper. And so we have to make decisions along the way. And many times in our individual lives, I know what we do is because we're human. When something happens that's bad, if we lose a job or we lose a loved one, or maybe if we lost a child, which is extremely difficult, it's hard for us to go back to that trust in God that, boy, this can be a good thing. And what can we learn from it? And how can we better serve you through having this happen to us? Because all we have is the hurt. And so at Bashor Children's Home, we truly try to listen to God and give glory to God for all the things that we've done. So I want to take you on this history lesson. So back in about 2008 and 2009, we're going to jump all the way back there. Does anybody remember what was happening at that time? Big news? Recession. Boy, I mean, everybody was out of work. The state were having budget problems. And for Bashor, what was happening, they were placing about half as many kids into residential care. So they were only taking care of about half as many. They were paying about half of what they normally paid us to take care of kids. And so we were under huge financial constraints. We were having conversation as an organization as to what our future is going to be. How are we going to continue our mission of helping kids successfully if we don't have any money coming in? And I remember in particular the September board meeting where we go through the financials at the beginning of our board meeting, and our treasurer reported that we were $300,000. I got to step down here. I'm afraid I'm going to fall, really. I'm going to walk down here a little bit. Sorry for the lights. But she reported we are $300,000 in the red in our September board meeting. So we'd already lost $300,000 that year. And what are we going to do, and how are we? We're making plans to try to figure this out. And then we get a little further into the meeting, and it comes up that says, Well, we've got this referral that the state wants us to take. As a young child, 11-year-old girl that was in the state hospital, and they didn't want her there anymore. They wanted to get her out. And she'd gone into care when she was 9. And she'd been, because she was physically abused by her mother. They found out that this young girl had been sexually abused by at least 2 different men. And she was very angry. And from 9 to 11, she was in 27 different residential facilities. So if you're good at math, that's not even a month was she staying at a place, and they were kicking her out because she was too tough, she was too hard, and she was too expensive. And so our board's looking at they're having a conversation about whether we should take this child in, because if we bring her in, what we're going to have to do is dedicate 3 staff to watch just her to keep her safe. And we're already looking at a $300,000 budget loss. And this is going to cost us a lot of money. This is going to cost us another $25,000 a month that we're going to lose on one child. And we've got 60 other kids on our campus to take care of and worry about. And they had a brief discussion. It went about 3 or 4 minutes, and one of our board members looked over his shoulder where our mission statement was, and it says, "Faithful to God, in keeping with the United Methodist tradition, Bashor Children's Home is to provide help for today and hope for tomorrow to troubled children and their families." Period. He read that out loud, and he goes, "Nowhere on there does it say if they're easy, if we can make money on them. We're just supposed to help." That's what God's called us to do. And that was pretty much the end of that discussion. We made arrangements, got that young lady in the next week. And we had a building, because our numbers were down, we had one building that was open that had 8 beds in it. And we brought her in there with 3 staff, and we took care of her. One of the things that was always kind of funny to me was our staff. Now, we have 3 staff with her all waking hours. We could cut back and only have 2 while she was sleeping to keep her safe. But one of the things our staff said, they were tired of playing Monopoly, because they played Monopoly for hours on end every day. All her meals came up there, her teachers came up there, everything. She lived in this building by herself with our staff for years. We dedicated years of time. She actually lived with us for over 7 years, the longest place she remembers living anywhere. And so I'm going to jump forward a little bit. So that was 2008, 2009. I'm going to jump forward to about 2015. And if you remember, in this community, we had a young man. He died in an abandoned house. He's a 16-year-old boy. He was sleeping in that house, and he froze to death one night. And so then there was a big outcry in the county about taking care of homeless kids, and the amount of homeless kids, the numbers of homeless kids that we had in Elkhart County. And so Bashor went to a bunch of meetings, and we looked at a bunch of things, and there was all these organizations and groups and churches, and it came down to the fact that in order to work with kids, you have to have special licensing, special background checks, the ability to do that, to be licensed. And so as a church, if we wanted to help, if you guys wanted to help adults, you could open up the doors, bring adults in, feed them, no problem. But when you're working with kids, it takes a special niche. You have to have a lot of things that are taken care of with the state. And so it made sense that Bashor, because we had all those boxes checked, we would reopen our homeless shelter for kids. We opened it on Monday. It was filled by Friday, and has pretty much maintained that even number of kids at capacity since we opened in 2016. So that's 6 years. We've got 6 to 8 kids that are homeless in that building at any one time, all the time. And they're with us for anywhere from hours. We had a young girl that she didn't want to do her homework, so she ran away, to kids that are there for months, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, as we work out their family situation. We are the safe place for Elkhart County, so if you see a safe place sign, you go to Martin's, you go to a fire station, you see a big yellow safe place sign. We are that safe place for kids. Any child can go into that where there's a safe place sign, say, "I'm homeless, I need help." They will call Bashor. We will go to that location, pick that child up, and get them back to our building within 30 minutes. So they have a safe place to sleep, they have food, they have clothes, they have all the necessities so that we don't ever have to have another child die because he has nowhere to go. So we fill that void. And one of the things that started to happen as we had the shelter open, we started to see these kids, young girls that were coming to us. And as we got to know what their problems were, as we're trying to figure out how do we work with you, how do we help you, how do we get you back reunited with your family or back with relatives or foster care, what is it that you need? We started to see young girls who were survivors of human trafficking. They didn't know that they were involved in human trafficking because they were just with their boyfriend, and the boyfriend who'd bought them a nice purse and a nice pair of jeans and had him for dinner, and then they fell in love, and I love him and he loves me, and then they would have this relationship and this bond, and then this person would ask these girls to do these horrible things, the unthinkable. And so they were being trafficked, but because it was with somebody they loved, they didn't see it as being trafficked. So we started to see more and more of these girls. So again, our board went to the mission and said, what do we do? And by this time, we're about 2018, and we have the young lady has now moved out of that building where she was with 3 staff all by herself, and she's with our other cottage with all the other girls. And so we had this building open again, so our board said, well, let's open a program and design a program to help these girls overcome this horrific trauma and abuse that they've been through. So we opened that building. It was opened on a Monday again. It was full by Friday. And then the next Friday, we had 13 girls that were on a waiting list to get help from the state. So this was a much bigger problem than we'd even thought. And I know for me, I mean, homeless. How do we have homeless kids? Where are their parents? How does this happen? And kids will be kicked out of houses. Kids will run away from abusive situations. And so you have homeless. And then how do we have trafficking? That happens other places. This is Goshen. This is Elkhart County. We don't have those types of problems here. But we're actually in an ideal location for human trafficking. Being on the toll road, being between a lot of major cities, between Detroit and Toledo and Chicago and Indianapolis, we are a thoroughfare. We have a major college, major sporting events that happen, and all of those things add up to places where they need girls. I know when we hosted the Super Bowl several years ago in Indianapolis, I was talking to some people, and there was a bigger presence of police officers there dedicated just to find girls who were being trafficked than there were any other aspect of law enforcement because of how big this criminal activity is. Right now, it is the second largest criminal activity in the United States to drugs. They project that by 2030, it will be the largest criminal activity in dollars. It is the fastest growing criminal activity in this country. And so it's an epidemic. So we have this new building, we have the girls in it, we have 13 on a waiting list. Again, we go, what can we do? What do we have to do? And our board of directors, now you have girls that come in. We just put 8 girls in this building, and I got 13 on a waiting list, and it's going to take these 8 girls at least a year of us working with them to get them, boy, better is just such a bad word for them. To get them, to help them overcome their past. Okay, come to an understanding of their past. It's going to take a year. And so I got these 13 girls waiting, and they're going to have to wait at least a year because we don't have any beds for them. And so what do we do? And so we had a donor, and our board of directors came together and had a donor that said, Steve, you've got to fix this problem. There's too many of these girls. Now, there are only 2 other agencies in the state of Indiana that offer these services. We're one of 3. We're the only one really north of Indianapolis that helps these kids, these girls. And so she came to me and she said, we got to do this, and I'll give you $1.5 million to start to make it happen. That's a lot of money. That means she's serious. And so we really had to get serious about this, and we talked about to some other people and found that there was support in the community for it. So our board said, okay, let's do a building campaign. Our building campaign, I remember the first number, my boss said, oh, it's going to cost us $4 million. And I said, no problem. Because I do the fundraising, me and the board. And I said, no problem, we can do that. Because I already knew we had $1.5 million, and I knew the community foundation would give us money, and we had another $1 million at the Federal Home Loan Bank and the community foundation. That's 2.5. Yeah, we get to 4. And then it went to 4.5, and then it went to 5. And it ended up being a $7.5 million complex. We built 2 buildings, 2 living units with 15 bedrooms each. We built a support building with a gym and a dining hall and classrooms and therapy rooms, and it's just an awesome complex. You can come see it at 2 o'clock. Little plug, if you're enticed. So we built all this. As we started this project, we started it in November of 2019. We got the first gift, and if you remember what happened in 2020, you guys remember? COVID. February, the world shut down at the end of February, and I have $6 million to raise. And I can't talk to anybody. And so I challenge you and say, if God is behind something, what's going to stop it if it is important? If you are listening to God in your life, and you have a dream, you have a goal, and God's behind it, there's nothing going to get in your way. Because COVID hit, and phones rang, and people called us, and we raised $6 million that we had to raise to build this building, and we opened it up in January. This building is so awesome. God got behind it. God said, this is my plan. And this is what I want to happen, so I'm going to make it happen. Ain't no COVID stopping us. So as the whole world was shut down, we were marching forward. We got the building built. We opened it in January. One of the funniest, the greatest stories I remember. Now, these girls, we have a young girl that came into our program from Elkhart County. She was chained to a bed in a motel in Elkhart County when the police found her. She'd been there for a year. She was given fast food to eat, and every night she was asked to do the unthinkable. 4, 5, 6 different men. We're taking care of her. We're providing services to her because of this new building, because of this new program, because we're trying to follow what God wants us to do. We have many of those kids. So we opened up this new building in January, and one of the first things, it's snowy outside, one of the first things that the girls did was they were playing volleyball inside because it's so eerie and there's so much natural light and all things that we wanted to give to these girls who have been cooped up in just a small space. Now, their bedrooms are small, but they have this other great area. We have the other support building, so they get to go outside every day. And one of the neat stories that we have is the girls and our staff picked out butterflies as the theme for the building. Not by chance, not just, ooh, that'll be fun. That'll be neat. We didn't want to have a number on a door, so we didn't want bedroom. Oh, Karen, you're in bedroom number 1. You're just another number. Just get in there. So we have different colored butterflies on every door with the bedroom, so the girls got to pick what color butterfly they wanted to be. And we picked that, and they did that because it was a resemblance of their life. If you think about a butterfly's life, it starts out as a caterpillar, and it's just crawling around on the ground. It's very vulnerable. Birds are flying down, picking them off. I said the other day, last weekend, I was driving to West Lafayette. I was going down 31. There must have been a mass exodus from some good food over here because there was just all these caterpillars on the road. And I was trying not to run them over, but I know I got a few. They were vulnerable. They can't run fast enough to get out of the way. And so they have this vulnerable life, kind of like these girls. When you're looking at a 12, 13, 14-year-old girl that is so impressionable, so naive, they're very vulnerable. And then the caterpillar goes to a cocoon where they have this safety of this building surrounding them to protect them. And that's what our new building is for these girls. It's protection. Nobody can get to them there. Nobody can hurt them there. And during that time in the cocoon, the caterpillar, what does it do? It transforms. It goes through this chrysalis. It transforms into this beautiful butterfly. And I don't think there's a one of us that would say a butterfly is not beautiful. As it flutters around, it's many, many different colors. as this caterpillar transforms out of this chrysalis and becomes the butterfly. That's what we teach these girls. While you're with us in your cocoon, you can become anything that you want to be. You now get to define your future. You don't have to let the ugliness of your past define what you're going to be in the future. You get to pick it out. You get to be and dream and get that big picture of what it is that you want to be and what your goals are in your life. And that's what we do with these girls. And that's kind of just a history lesson of things that we've been doing at Bashor over the years. We continue to reach out. Monday morning, we have a staff meeting, and everybody goes around the room and talks about what's happening. And I just found out this past Monday, we had a 10-year-old come into our shelter who was severely sexually abused. And so what did our staff do? They immediately went to work. Now, we don't have a program for 10-year-old girls. There's not one in northern Indiana. It's not supposed to happen to girls that young. That's not, it's inconceivable. It's unbelievable. But so immediately our staff went to work, and we are now spending the next 3 to 6 months that are going to develop a program to help these girls. That's next on the list. We also had a young man that I found out he came to us. He'd been through several different placements, and he had glaucoma. He had an eye problem. And he'd been to several different other facilities, and our nurse came to meet with him and said, well, boy, you got a problem there. And he said, yeah, I've been that way for a long time. She immediately made plans for him to go down to Indianapolis, have surgery, and our staff went down there with him. The DCS worker said, yeah, we'll be there. They didn't show up. His family said, yeah, we'll be there. They didn't show up. Our staff sat with this young man down there through the surgery, all the way back, and he can see now. What a difference in his life. This young man's 9 years old. He was living in a blind world right now, and because our nurse saw him and said, boy, this isn't just about watching kids, it's about healing the whole person. Said, we can get you that surgery, we can get you fixed. And now he came back and he can see. That's what we do for kids. We look at everything that's ailing them, whether it's their body, their mind, or their soul. And we're going to reach out and try to heal them the best that we can. And we do it because of our family, our church family, you guys here. You guys help us make it possible, so thank you very much.